Ladies and gentlemen, big terror news.
Hey, kia ora koutou, e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy. Lovely to have you back.
Kia ora, Pat. Yes, I was away and now I am here. Yay.
Do you want to tell everyone the dramatic story, or should we just leave it and move on?
My mother-in-law is in town from England, so we decided we would go for a lovely weekend away. Whole family. My brother-in-law came over from Australia as well. We went to Queenstown.
Cool.
However, on the way to Queenstown, my wife's internal combustion car died in Alexandria, so about halfway. We were going to take one car, and I was like, "Hey, why don't we take my EV as well?" Then we've got
because you wanted to have
nothing to run.
You wanted to have a play. Let's be fair.
I like to drive it. It's a fun drive.
Yeah.
But yes, sensible reasons as well. And what was overall an absolutely stunning weekend. We had cracker weather. It was just really, really nice. Was an overlaying level of stress of like, how expensive is this going to be? Can we get it to a mechanic? All of that sort of stuff. So the good stuff is this. There's a picture from our accommodation. That's a picture that my wife made, or took, I should say. Absolutely stunning. Amazing weekend. We were staying in the Gibson Valley, so outside of Queenstown, and just phenomenal weekend.
Leave that there. Is that just a photo, or is that one of those we'll leave the lens open for a minute and let things move around, or is it just a snapshot?
A little bit of both. So that's from my my cell phone, using an app that kind of unlocks a lot more control over the camera. So yes, this is about 15 images stacked on top of each other to get that that light in there over the space of about a minute. So yeah, fun playing out and getting those settings right and getting pictures like this.
That's amazing. Yeah, leave that there for a second. I want to show the mistresses in the other side of the room. Look at that photo, love, on the wall.
24.
Yeah. Sorry, just sharing it around. Multiple people in the studio. Very good. Well, we've got an interesting show tonight. There's some very sad news that I'm sure most of you have read about to do with the working group. If you don't know why it is the end of the working group, we will go through that for you. I have obviously been in touch with Bomber today. Offered condolences. It's one of those things that's sort of a news story for us. So I did say to him, I said to him, look, if it was me, I wouldn't want to come and talk, but I'm going to offer if you want to come and talk. And of course, because he's gutted, basically, didn't want to talk about it. So that's fine. Which makes sense. Also, Chewy, you won't be aware of this, but last night we were talking a bit about the upcoming budget and had some ideas and thoughts around what Craig Renney had worked out over the weekend. So I recorded Craig Renney's podcast over the weekend. That's supposed to come out this Thursday. I got a text from Craig, I probably read it actually this morning, that basically said, holy shit, what she's just announced makes basically my whole podcast void. So in other words, there was a very big announcement made today. And it's made all Craig's kind of predictions or ideas, and let me just let you know this, Chewy. You probably figured this already. It's not a change for the better.
Shocking.
So the podcast that would have gone out on Thursday, podcast that would have got out on Thursday was some pre-budget analysis, is probably going to have to be recorded tomorrow, I guess. I don't know. We'll try and find the time. And it's going to be worse, the pre-budget analysis. But Craig is in Australia at the moment. That's why we recorded it in the weekend. And he's going to dial in about 9:30 and just talk over what Nicola Willis said today about the upcoming budget. TVNZ did a nice bit on it where they showed, this is not going to be a lolly scramble, and basically showed all the finance ministers from the past 30 years all saying exactly the same thing. This is not going to be a lolly scramble. This is not going to be a lolly scramble. So it's one of those, I guess, words when they're trying to go, no, there's no money in the coffers. Look,
the whole, this isn't going to be a lolly scramble, or this budget is going to be a lolly scramble. It's one of those terms that they always use, and I hate it.
That's the point I guess I'll make.
I hate it.
And also, there's two things. There's one thing that we haven't actually advertised, which is the result in Canada, which has been announced already. 6 o'clock it was being announced. So we'll play I think we're playing a 3 news story on that.
Oh,
and,
so good.
What is happening is everyone was going like, the world is turning to the right. Look what's happening. The world is turning to the right. Look at Trump. The world is turning. Look at New Zealand as well. And there was a local election in the US. I can't remember which state it was, but it was kind of a purplish, but more Republican than, it was like Republican 60-40. And old Muskie man went in there to try and buy the election. And Musk himself was saying from stage of this electoral state, it might have been Illinois maybe, that this is a referendum on Trump. And guess what happened? Republicans got demolished because he was right. It's a referendum on Trump. Now, the other thing that is happening apparently now, if you look at Australia and you look at Canada, there are continuing to be referendums on Trump. And there seems to be a bit of backlash to the world is turning right. And I tell you what, mate, it just makes it an interesting run up to the next election here. We may be the last domino that falls turning away from the right if this is the trend that happens. So
I would hope so. We've also got the Australian election in there as well. So
yeah, but I think they're saying the same about that, about the
Oh,
I was
100%.
getting confused because they're the liberals in Australia are the conservatives. So yeah, so we don't have too much. Actually, maybe we'll just start with that. We don't have too much analysis over that because it's only just come out. And I'm just going to play the story off 3 News for that. And of course, the other thing is David Seymour, after cancelling the what are they called? They're called like basically we used to call them truancy officers when I was at school. This government has made all those positions redundant. And now, that's the wrong term for them, by the way. They're not truancy officers. It's a different word. And now, David Seymour is going to the mayors of the cities, basically saying, can you guys help with the wagging, the truancy issues? After all these mayors got scolded by Christopher Luxon, telling them to basically stick to your local body politics, keep your nose out of anything else, stick to your potholes and your water pipes. So after they got told that a few months ago by this government, now another member of this government is going, by the way, could you help with the Ministry of Education issues as well? That would be nice. So that's a bit ridiculous as well. So yeah, lots of bits and bobs going on. Maybe we'll start actually, because I'm having a look. Craig's supposed to dial in at about 9:30, so we can't do our normal thing where we do our first 15-minute story, finish at 5 to 10. So maybe why don't we actually start with the work? Let's start with Canada. Kind of starting on some good news, perhaps. Does that suit you, sir? Unless there's anything else before we get going.
Yeah, no. Let's start with something like, when do we ever do that?
Yeah. All right. Referendum on Trump in Canada. Apparently, 6 weeks ago, Trudeau's party was absolutely in the crapper. And then the more that Trump made noises that, Canada should be the 51st state. You're being rude. Should be the 51st state. He was actually tweeting out, you should vote for me. Canadians should vote for Trump to be their president of the 51st state. Probably not tweeting it, whatever that, oh gosh, I've just lost the name of the thing. What's the name of that? No, The new Alibaba, but on an app. What's the Alibaba on your app called? That terrible Temu. He has Temu Twitter. Whatever his thing is Temu Twitter. So he was putting out on Temu Twitter, that they should vote for him to be their president. That within a space of literally weeks, the world just turned back to Trudeau's party and the left, and it's the result they've had tonight.
Let's head to Canada now, where Mark Carney's Liberal Party has done what just weeks ago many would have thought impossible and won the election. It's a remarkable reversal in fortunes for Justin Trudeau's successor, who many believe owes his win to Donald Trump after a surge in Canadian anger towards the US. Senior correspondent Lisette Raymer reports.
Midnight celebrations for Mark Carney. The anti-Trump now with Trump to thank, by polite Canadian standards at least, for this stunning political comeback.
President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
The 60-year-old riding a surge in nationalism to victory.
We have, in fact, called a Liberal government with Mark Carney as Canada's 24th Prime Minister.
It's a result that appeared impossible just a month ago. A decade under Justin Trudeau had Liberal lethargy peaking, and the Conservatives were cruising into power.
Who's voting for change?
But within just weeks, a sewn-up election was unpicked. The left got a new leader, and the right hit trouble with Trump, the third man of Canadian politics.
Canada should honestly become our 51st state.
The US president has dominated the election without even being on the ballot. Even as voting began today, he took to Truth Social to claim the border between the two nations is artificially drawn and urged Canadians to elect a man who has strength and wisdom to make...
What does he mean? Artificially drawn? What, like every border of every country in the world? Artificially drawn. He is a very stupid man. I mean, he is a very stupid man.
Canada, the cherished 51st state of America. The Trump factor has proven to be Carney's trump card.
Thank you,
Casting his own ballot under a sombre cloud today, his campaigning was cut short by the recent car ramming tragedy in Vancouver, attending a vigil for the victims on election eve. But the former governor of the Bank of Canada has pledged to stand up to Washington and fight back.
We have to look out for ourselves. And above all, we have to take care of each other.
His opposition, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, has often been compared to Trump and pushed a Canada First slogan.
There are these political figures around the world who have been doing, I mean, like just think about in New Zealand, these political figures. You imagine if, the kind of make New Zealand great again, that thing was being said now. It seemed to help them when they used it, because there was that Trumpian vibe. I wonder, though, the next election, hopefully they're not smart enough to look at things like this and go, this hasn't helped these guys at all. In fact, it's probably harmed them. So, the more David Seymour and Winston Peters get into that, I guess the difference is here they only need 5%, don't they? And that Trumpian vote's always going to get at least 5%. So I guess we shall see.
Often been compared to Trump and pushed a Canada First slogan.
All right, everyone, get out to vote.
Appealing to the portion of his base who are proud Trump fans.
Mark Carney, if we get him, we're dead.
You're dead.
Yeah, you're dead, yeah. We'll be a third world country.
But for most, Canada's meddling neighbour is too risky, and Poilievre's grand advantage as the candidate of change collapsed in staggering fashion. The sudden need for voters to defend their sovereignty, enough to flip their favour.
I mean, how could you not be changed by someone threatening your country?
When they put a clown in a palace, it doesn't make him king. It makes the palace a circus.
He's brought Canadians together.
That's a good line.
I see it as a very positive effect.
It's not yet known if Carney has won a majority government, but Canadians are clearly rallying around the flag with their vote.
Yeah. So, I mean, It sounds so stupid to say it out loud because you kind of want to go, well, of course the Trump influence won't help somebody, but it seems that has helped people for the last little while, and now the seas are turning. Is that right? The tide's turning, the weather's turning. It's all turning at the moment, apparently.
I think it's a lesson if people are wanting to pay attention to it. Like, I think a lot of people have seen what has happened in the US with Trump as this is a blueprint of how to do it in my own country. But the system's completely different. The culture is completely different. The way they vote, everything is completely different. And I think if you're from another country and you want to just draw a straight line between you and a political figure in another country, like you take the good with the bad. Like, there's a lot. Do you think that that's going to have the numbers to carry you?
It probably echoes that thing when we were talking about crime a few weeks ago. And when I was on Talkback, people always used to talk about the results of Singapore. And the point was, you can't get the results of Singapore when it comes to crime stats unless you bring the whole society and run your whole society like Singapore. So what you're saying is probably the same. You know, to get the bounce that you might think Trump will give you, you sort of need to be another America, which on some hand, Canada is probably the closest thing to that, but obviously not close enough.
And I think it needs to be like, if Trump just kept his policies within America and didn't take a swipe at Canada, like that was the poison chalice at that point. Like, it was too late to change tack. It was too late to try and undo all of the things he said. Like, they lifted his slogan fucking wholesale. Yeah. Let's make Canada great again. It's just bizarre. It is such a drubbing that conservative candidate isn't even winning his own seat.
Yeah.
He is potentially gone from government. It's like, is there a greater message? And I hope that will be transferred into Australia's election as well, with Dutton. Like, there are attack ads against Dutton running on major networks in Australia at the moment that just say Dutton wants Australia to be just like America. They're not elaborating on that. They're letting people's mind do all of the heavy lifting on that slogan.
Well, there's news tonight as well about how I just put in Australian election polls, so I'm not sure exactly what we're going to get, but I'll just click on the first one, which is the Guardian, which is Australians are running from the American brand, like the world is. Number of tourists are way down. I mean, I showed that clip last week about, it's only just one business, but that YouTuber Jazza, who's nearly going back. Well, I don't know if he's going bankrupt, but they're having to lay people off because of the tariffs are making it impossible to sell his product into America. It's too expensive, and that's how they kind of partly fund their YouTube channel. So that's happening all over the place. So it's like, why would people today associate themselves with such a toxic brand? Yet some people still think it's the golden chalice. There you go. Labour between 49.5 and 53. Coalition between 47 and 50.5. I'm assuming the red Labour. Two-party preferred primary votes. I guess that's the Conservatives. The Coalition's still up there, but I'm guessing if you join some of these parties together, like the Greens and them, that's where you get to your increase.
So, talking to my brother-in-law who's from Australia, he is saying that he is seeing with his friend group and the people that he talks to a big swing away from the two major parties in Australia to independents. So they're picking up a lot of votes there of people that are like, well, I don't like the Liberals, and Labor are just like liberal light.
Yeah.
They're all kind of pulling in the same direction with slight variations. And that's a lot of the criticism that you'll see here with our two major parties. But of course, we have the benefit of MMP.
Yeah.
So our independent or third parties and that sort of thing have a lot more relevance compared to the absolute no chance that they have in the US. to that
Here's
kind of sometimes have an effect in Australia.
So here's what you're saying as well. Support for Labor has declined. Support for the coalition has declined. Support for the Greens has increased. Support for others have increased. So it's got the Greens up as high as 14.1% and the others up as high as nearly 25%. So that's nearly 40, maximum of nearly 40% of the vote in other, is what you're saying.
What I would like to know is how much effect has Juice Media had on this? Like, you know what I'm talking about with the honest political ads from Australia? No. Okay, so there's been a YouTube channel for a long time doing like fake government announcements and that sort of thing, just running through major issues with a heavily sarcastic tone. But a big chunk of what they've been doing over the last almost 2 years is just referring to Labor and the Liberals as shit and shit light as the names of the parties, and just going, well, look, if they're basically going to do the same thing as anybody else, why not vote for an independent? And they have been hammering that message for 2 years. And I think this is the first time that we've seen that it might be actually having an effect. Their viewership has gone up massively in that time. So, yeah, I think if that's what they're saying, then they should take a victory lap.
And of course, 21 years ago, Chewy, right? 21 years ago, a certain other group was saying that exact message.
A shit sandwich and a giant douche.
If you haven't seen that episode of South Park Whānau, look up Giant Douche and Turd Sandwich. And basically, these are the proposed mascots for the elementary school. And the kids have to vote for either a giant douche or a turd sandwich. And of course, it might be Kyle, one of the main characters, wants to give up on voting because what's the point? And the end of the whole episode ends with him doing a monologue, which is basically, I guess it's always been that we either vote for a giant douche and a turd sandwich. So it's actually exactly what you're saying, Chewy, just over 2 decades ago from the brilliant creators of South Park.
And to bring it all back home to New Zealand, those lessons are there to be learnt by our parties as well. Like, we talk about our independence and that sort of thing. We talk about Labor needing to distance themselves from their major opposition in National. Like, I don't want to see just, oh, well, we're just slightly to the left of centre, I'm just slightly to the right of centre, because you're just getting dragged right. That's what's happening. You're getting dragged right.
Oh, I think the one difference we do have here is the Greens. I think in theory, Labor can sit centre left, and they can sit in those places that maybe some of us, many of us watching perhaps, mightn't be our comfortablest place to vote. But then there's the Greens. And as we've seen with this, if the Greens do it right, as we've seen with this election, the Greens will have, maybe Te Pāti Māori in a 3-way, will have the power to be able to get a whole bunch of stuff through, just like ACT New Zealand first have, by dragging Labor left.
Yeah. So is that the lesson that's going to be learned? Are Greens and Te Pāti Māori going to see the enormous amount of power that they could wield? Is it a case of Luxon was just an incredibly shit negotiator and just went, yep, sure, whatever you want. I just want to get my polo shirt with my name on it and Prime Minister underneath that I can keep and put it in the pool room once I'm done. Or have they been too soft in putting forward what they want? Are they just happy to be included? Or are they going, you know, these are red line issues for us? We saw what David Seymour and Winston Peters got given. That was the golden goose for them, and they had like under 10%. We've got more than that. Give it to us.
All right, team. A couple of someone being a bit cheeky. I thought we were here on time today, weren't we? Wakey. Although I did notice when I walked into the studio, I had 1 minute to get live on air, and I hadn't loaded up the computer properly yet. So okay, we might have been here at 1 minute past, I guess. Kiwi Bird says, "I'm going to miss roasting Damien Grant on the working group."
I reckon that's the reason why they're gone. Too much cyberbullying from us specifically.
Sorry, you can do the rest of those. I'm just talking with Craig in Australia.
Oh, okay. Craig's in Australia. Yes, we'll get to talking about working group, but yeah, he took his toys and ran. The Conservatives must be in despair. Very good. This is, speaking of cyberbullying, I think this is an excellent example. Nice to see Chewy in his lumberjack uniform in support of Canada.
Palestinian lumberjack as well, I can see. Is that how it works?
Gotta get them all there. Late fee for Vanda Amor. If you could write that down on the ledger, that'd be great. And Heck and Bees with the late fee was at a Cyber Ninja Park AO night, 10 out of 10. Some of that's in code. I'm too old to work out what that means. So Cyber Ninja Park sounds very good.
Cool, team. All right, so Craig's just texted me. He said he's going to be about 20 minutes. So we will just, as you can see, I've got a screen all loaded up for Budget 2025. So we'll just put that away and not do that right now. We'll do it closer to Craig. Let's look into the working group news. This is really sucky. And let me just say, Bomber is pissed. Like he's pissed because it seems that Damien Grant has actually been nefarious in the active cancellation
hang on.
of the working
point
group.
of clarification.
Yeah.
Which Damien Grant are we talking about? Because there's many Damien Grants on the planet. What was his key indicator?
I think he's Damien Grant thrice convicted fraudster.
Oh, thrice
is it
convicted
thrice?
Fraudster. Once, twice, 3 times the lady.
Yeah.
That'd be the Zionists supporting Damien Grant, the guy that sounds like some sort of hell beast crossed with Kermit the Frog. Damien Grant.
So this is the tweet I put out when I saw the post from Marty. We know they're hypocrites. We just needed a topic that they couldn't fathom the opposing view being tolerated, let alone protected. Israel is that topic. Free speech for me and not for thee. Right? Because what it's all about, and we'll go through the article now, Marty points out several times, the free speech purist basically chucked his toys over Marty's positions on, not bombing women and children and
human
Gaza.
rights.
Yeah, couldn't find their place. All right, so let's just go through this. There's a bit of reading, and if some of you have seen it, Sarah, that comes up in this, so we'll share with you. Comrades, it is with deep sadness that I announce the working group has been cancelled by the political right. Comrades, it is with deep sadness that I announce that. I just went there, it's the same as the heading. New Zealand's gold award-winning political podcast. You don't have to hold that over our heads constantly, Marty. Come on, bit of grace.
Trying to support here, and he's just
we're trying to be nice to you. You have to push that in our faces again. Has been cancelled by the political right. Now, it's a really good article. You should go and read it. Look, it talks about all the people that help them out, lots of people in the production of it, all the guests that help them out. So go through and have a look at all that. We're not going to focus on that right now. We're going to get to the actual story. Marty says, we made some incredible media, and it is with a deeply heavy heart that I announce that it has been cancelled by the political right. Damien Grant owns Gravity Management, and Gravity Management sponsors the working group. There's an email here, which I won't read out word for word, but if you go and have a look at the article, the post of the article is in the show notes, by the way. It basically shows Damien being full of beans and ready to go for this year. The first line says it's time to play the music, it's time to light the lights, it's time to meet the Muppets on the working group tonight. So he was, and I mean, as you said, we have a Kermit already cast, so that's not a problem. So we're getting there. Goes on to say, however, over the summer, Damien and I began fighting again privately over content that I was publishing on the daily blog. It was critical of the contacts between the New Zealand Institute and Stuff. Another article, it's interesting actually, Marty's put up these, I guess what they were private emails, talking about, from Damien Grant, I'm sorry, Martyn, there is just too much on your blog, and this email below has left me feeling kicking off another season with the same format is going to require more from me than I have the emotional capacity to provide. I thought we were the snowflakes. Aren't we supposed to be the snowflakes? That's us, isn't it? Maybe not.
Yeah.
There was a lightness to the show. Shit, he's never heard himself, obviously, that I think that has been eroding, and the blow up with Oliver and other fights has left me unwilling to continue to fund something I no longer have a passion for. We shall go on in the article. Marty writes, there has been a building tension behind the scenes of the working group for some time. Damien seems to have believed that because he sponsored the working group, that he had some type of editorial content over the daily blog, and was constantly wanting me to change my tone on criticism towards Israel and my criticism of the New Zealand Initiative, or connecting them to the Atlas Network.
Oh, okay.
I repeatedly explained to Damien that he was not the editor of the daily blog. As editor of the daily blog, I will always criticize the right when I think they are wrong. I will always highlight the links with the hard right, free market think tanks and the political and media infrastructure of New Zealand, and I will stop criticizing Israel when they stop murdering Palestinians. I have conveyed this passionately back to Damien many times. The tension came to a head over summer as I published blogs linking Stuff's political editor to the New Zealand Initiative and Nicola Willis. So there's another article there, and there's a link there if you want to go check it out for yourself. Now, I actually know that there are some people who are in our sphere who don't like everything that Bomber has to say and think some of his positions on some things are a bit weird. And many times have we had the question, how does he work with Damien Grant? So we'll keep reading. I find it astonishing that a free speech champion like Damien is pulling the sponsorship to an award-winning political podcast because his right-wing mates don't like my free speech. The hypocrisy is astounding because initially Damien, slip of the tongue, agreed to allow me to find a new sponsor and continue on. We agreed that what we had built with the working group was bigger than him feeling pressured to pull funding because of his right-wing mates had their feelings hurt by things I was saying. I went out, found a new sponsor, was about to announce the new start date when Damien contacted me, reneged on the agreement and decided to ensure I could not continue with the show by pulling his support for me continuing with it. Now, it doesn't say explicitly there, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to ask Bomber this one day, but that sounds like perhaps Damien has ownership, or perhaps they are 50-50 or something. And so, because I kind of go, when like in America, a host will leave MSNBC and they'll go to CNN and they just change the name of the show slightly, but it's basically the same show. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's what you do. But obviously there's a bit more intertwined to this that they need to work out. I mean, Bomber's got the daily blog. I'm sure we'll see him again doing something online, whether it's with Rover or being more independent. I don't know. But yeah, apparently Damien pulling his support for him continuing it implies an element of control that Damien has over the working group per se. The working group has a unique media experiment, and the body of work we produced and the range of guests was something I will always be proud of. Having the working group cancelled because a free speech champion has been bullied into this because his right-wing mates don't like my free speech, and this is the bit that many of you won't agree with, I'm sure. I believe stains the mana of Damien's work as a columnist in a way he doesn't appreciate nor comprehend. I know some people are going to go mana, but what I hear, how I would interpret that is, if you had any element of respect towards him for his ability to write, maybe that's gone now as well. But anyway, but they are, or certainly were, mates. That's probably where that's coming from. When you see him pimping the Free Speech Union, remind him of that hypocrisy, please. Now, this is a bit of the where to from here. I own the YouTube page, The Working Group. I own the YouTube page The Working Group has been loaded up onto, and the Facebook page. And know there are some ACT party who would prefer the only treaty referendum debate disappeared altogether. So can I reach out to the National Library to take a copy so that is on file somewhere in case Damien starts legal action to seize the YouTube page? I'm going to go and have a long drink now watching the Libertarian you spent 3 years working with burn your work down in a Viking funeral that's only he's been invited to is a tad draining for this socialist. I'll be back once I've sobered up. So there is a few unanswered questions, like what is the ownership model? There's obviously something to do with Damien and the ownership model because he can't move forward. I mean, I would ask Marty as well, if Marty is watching, I would say, well, so from next week onwards, it's the working group with Bomber, or it's Bomber's working group, or it's another name.
Big hairy working group. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Are we going to start like a CSI thing? How there's like CSI Miami and CSI Los Angeles and CSI? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah. Big hairy working group.
But what I'm saying is, this is the question I would have for Bomber one day. If you've organised a sponsor, well, fuck the name. The name is not the product. You are the product. You know, the content is the product. And I'm sure there's many people out there who have already offered their help, that if you want to find another space, you can find another space. But, you know, I guess what I'm reading in that as well, Chewy, is, well, I know he's pissed because he told me I'm so angry and I tweet back. And I guess it's going to take, and he's probably hurt because it's friends and stuff, you know, mates at one stage. So maybe he just needs, you know, you give yourself a bit of space to go work things out. Sorry, my watch is going mad on me. I'm keep looking at it because in case it's Craig. You need space sometimes. You give something a day or two, a week or whatever, then you look back on it and you go, okay. And there's that horrible thing that when you're sitting in the middle of it, doesn't feel good. But sometimes 6 months later you go, yeah, that was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah, look, working group was, like, it was important. Like, as much as I'd like to watch it just to dunk on Damien more often than not.
Yeah, that's a shame. We don't have that anymore, Chewy. Every week on Wednesday night, we'd have some bullshit from Damien Grant to throw.
40% of our content is gone. Look, it was an interesting product. It stood out there, because it wasn't under the wings of a major network or that sort of thing. It was a weird format because you had an avowed leftist like Bomber trying to moderate it, and having the guy who's ponying up the money to enable it as being the alternative voice, and then a real spread of guests. Now, we heavily criticized some of those guests, but that's the good thing about the show, right?
Yeah.
Is that you could get someone on there, and it could be a seasoned political operator. It could be, what was his face from Voyager? CB.
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 Yeah. Have you seen some of the articles going around recently about him and the Voyager Awards? Holy moly.
Exactly why I mentioned it. You know, Annie O'Brien and that sort of thing. And you go, oh, okay, this person that has been operating in the halls of power and been involved with people's political campaigns is a raving idiot. That is helpful to me. And the working group would not exist without Bomber.
Yeah, of course.
Like, Damien Grant does not have the pulling power to attract an audience, whereas Bomber did. And I know that many of the people here in our chat also inhabited the chat of the working group. We did call it the BHN pre-show. Because the net, like if you're talking about politics in this country, the net casts in the same pond, it catches the same people.
Yeah.
But on that show, you got probably a bigger proportion of what we refer to as our country croutons. And is there a product out there that is like that now? No. We're too wholeheartedly left.
Yeah, but can I just say something with
News
that?
Talk
We are.
ZB is more full-throatedly right.
But we are too wholeheartedly left. But just to say this, in case anyone's joining us for the first time and they don't know this, we ask. I spent last week asking, when they made their family boost announcement, when New Zealand First made their, defining sex, we asked for them. We ask for the politicians on the right and stuff, and they don't come on. They choose not to. Now, I'm not like other pathetic piles of melted pancake batter and go, well, we just don't come on. So it's not that I care. You don't have any, I never feel entitled to someone's time, no matter who it is. They don't have to come on, but just so people know, we ask. We send out emails regularly and ask, and they don't come on. So just so everyone's clear, it's not that we're only going to sit in this space and we don't want to interact with it. It's like we do ask, they don't come.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think going into an election, not having the working group operating once a week is, again, it's a hit. It might affect a smaller group, but it is going to affect a group of some of the most politically activated and switched on viewers and commentators on our political scene.
Yeah,
it's gone now. And again, we don't have the crossover again. So we become even more in our own camps, in our own echo chambers. So, yeah, I think it's a problem. I think it's a shame. I'm quite happy to hang the whole thing on Damien Grant because as Bomber spells out quite fucking clearly, Damien could, within rights, tell Bomber what to say to some degree when it came to the working group as a product. He absolutely has no solid ground to stand on to go to Bomber's product, the Daily Blog, and say, you can't talk about Israel. You can't talk about the New Zealand initiative. That's so out the fucking gate. Like, did you think that would work? And then to pack up your toys and go when you're told the truth is just it shows his character.
And the other thing, just to talk back when you were talking about, they have these other voices on. It's a little bit like I get the feeling, I get the sense, and I think we are moving more in that direction once someone decides to come on. Although once they come on, they might not want to come back on. I don't know. We'll see. Is sometimes people don't like voices being like platformed, but if you're going to do a honest news conversation, then you have newsmakers on your show, no matter where they're from. The kind of flip side to that is we like Jack Tame, right? But sometimes he gives ass to Chippy. If you're going to be an honest actor, it's got to go both ways. And I feel like that from us and from this show, that sometimes if we're going to get someone on that some of you may not like, well, it's got to go both ways. We can't just always have on the echo chamber the people we like only. If we're going to be a news commentary show, which is what we are, we do have to engage with those voices once they decide they want to engage with us. So,
and look, I've seen people sort of criticize us of being a little bit too soft on Chippy, and I think all I can say with that is, with something like this, you want someone to come back on and there's a little bit of relationship building going on and that sort of thing. But I like to think that we don't pull our punches too.
I don't think we're soft on Chippy. I mean, we gave him a lot of ass over the capital gains tax. We talked to him about shitting on Green Party people, and I had Barb on last night.
I think I brought that up twice, right?
Yeah. I had Barb on last night, Barbara Edmonds, and I said to her, look, if this is you guys when you win, we're asking you the same questions because we will. And there are many people, we get this all the time. Oh, what did you say to such and such? Well, if you actually look at the history of our such and such, we normally did ask those questions of the other side as well. Right, but they normally say that because there's an expectation media now that you only talk to your echo chamber and you give the other side a pass. I actually would like to live in a world and practice whatever this is called that we do, where we're harder on our side because I want our side to be better.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I want our side to win, and I'm not going to sit there and coddle your testicles, you know, because some of you don't have any, and just go, "You're great, you're fantastic," because that won't be
through no fault of your own, by the way.
No fault of your own. Because that's not going to help. I want to win, and if my side needs to be given a fucking rocket to win, then I think it's actually not just the appropriate thing to do, but it's actually the helpful thing to do. I mean, you know, tax work less, tax wealth more. We'll keep pushing Chippy on that, and we'll see what happens around election time. You know, and maybe he'll palm it off to the Greens and it'll be Chloe's measured. Fine, but we'll keep pushing it. You know, we'll keep pushing it. All right, let's do some breaking news. Rajan, I think, shared some news there.
Delicious. Brace yourself, fam. This is great.
Now, I've just been having a look around because you know me, Chewy. I'm like, let's confirm that. There you go. Yeah. So that was 8 minutes ago.
Lost the election, lost his own seat.
So they're still first past the post, basically. Yeah. So that's not in Parliament. Yeah. No other way to get back in.
So that's I was like the turnaround. Like I know the story that we had talked about a little bit. The turnaround has been so brutal and so quick. Now, remember, Trudeau was dealing with a lot of the same stuff that Jacinda dealt with here, like the rise of the cookers, and he had the trucker convoys and all sorts of stuff. Like he wasn't winning anywhere. And that's why he stood down. He takes some of that toxicity away with him. I'm sure he's fucking sick of it. But then to have someone sort of pick up the banner and run with it, people were just writing that off across the board. And in the space of a month and a half, all turned around. Now it's up to the Liberals in Canada to do something with that, because
for sure
I would kind of say at this point that they didn't win because of the strength of their policies or ideas. They lost on nationalistic rage against Trump.
They won. That's it. Yeah. And look, but I think the reality is most of the time when you're looking around, there's I don't know if it's always the winning formula, but often the winning formula is a vote against rather than a vote for. I mean, if you have a look at, that's what our election was. It was a vote against rather than a vote for.
Yeah.
I mean, who would vote for what we've got right now? If you look at America, it was a vote against rather than a vote for. Not always like that. I think in the UK, Labour won pretty handily because they wanted to vote for. But then again, they were voting for because they were sick of the other guys. So you still could argue it was a vote against. Let's just get to these super chats real quick because Craig has just slid into our DMs. I will leave the super chats that don't relate specifically to the working group till afterwards so we can get to Craig more quickly. Yep. So just so you know, Kiwi Bird says, I thought Damien the Libertarian liked free speech. I guess that's the exact point that Bomber was making in that. Or Somosaurus. I can't imagine two people whose opinions I don't need more than convicted fraudster Damien Grant and anti-woke troll and cry bully Bomber Bradbury. Yes, that's what we're saying. We know there are some people out there who do have a very different view of Bomber. Does this mean that BHN is now the #1 New Zealand political podcast? No, I think we always knew that was the case. I mean, we let baby have his bottle.
That sounds a lot like Donald Trump boasting about how he's now the tallest building in New York post 9/11.
Oh, God.
Just we'll see.
And Peter, you are correct. I mean, the grassroots support of any kind of independent media outlet that you're supporting, whether it's, I talked a bit about Hori last night, Chewy, because I was wearing one of his t-shirts. He's not media, but independent content creators, independent creators, independent news. That's it. I mean, when we get a sponsor or an advertiser, that'll be great for the month or so they're with us, but it's the grassroots that enable us to go, oh, let's go to Auckland because we'll be nominated for an award and see if we can bring one home. And then you guys all have ownership in that. So 100%, Peter, 100%. Osomosaurus again. To be fair, Damien, I find Bomber emotionally exhausting, and I don't have to work with him. Fine, fair enough. There's one that says Bamba. It's Bomber probably. Bomber should deposit the originals of the videos with Ngāi Taonga Sound and Vision, New Zealand's moving image archive, to protect them. There you go. And I think there's only one more. There are other super chats, but we're going to get to the pertinent ones. Big Hairy Bombs featuring Martyn Bomber Bradbury. There you go, from Arvid. Is that it? What was the last one? Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that'll do. Next one's about Mike Hosking and stuff. Okay, we better get straight to it because he's in Australia. I guess he's been lying in the sun all day because what else do you do in Australia? There's no other reason to go. Let's welcome to the show Craig Renney. Craig, kia ora and good evening to you, sir.
Kia ora, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Craig. Doing well. Thank you for joining us. This is a bit of an impromptu sort of conversation, but I thought what we'd do, I've got 3 clips from the stand-up today, and I've got the news story, which is about 3.5 minutes. Maybe we'll watch the news story, and then we'll have a chat and start bringing those actual, because obviously, 90 seconds from the stand-up is going to give us more direct information that you can speak to than the news story, but the news story will give us overall probably a better view. Let's have a look.
Don't expect any sweetness from the government's budget to be unveiled in just over 3 weeks. Finance Minister Nicola Willis today confirming this year's budget will not be a lolly scramble. As she admitted, it's not the easiest time to be putting together.
Like we said at the start of the show, like every finance minister for the last 40 years has said, but it's a headline still.
Together a budget. She also slashed the operating allowance. That's the new money available to spend in the budget, from $2.4 billion to $1.3 billion, meaning less funding for government departments and initiatives.
Jesus.
Nicola Willis did emphasise, though, increased investment in some areas, including health, education, law and order, and the Defence Force. Senior political reporter Ben.
I thought it was interesting when I was watching the story live as well. I mean, cost of living crisis. I mean, health you could put in there possibly, maybe a bit of education, but not really anything to directly one-on-one impact the cost of living crisis, which is interesting.
Benedict Collins has more details, reaction, and what it could mean for you.
With trade wars and uncertainty afoot, the Finance Minister is treading carefully.
Let me be blunt. It's not the easiest time to be delivering a budget.
Nicola Willis believes we're borrowing too much as a country, and now is the time for restraint.
While you can keep
so many points to make already, so many points to make already.
Giving the credit card a hammering for a while, left unpaid, it does eventually get declined.
They borrowed an additional $12 billion in last year's budget in order to fund tax cuts. One of the reasons they have the big structural deficit they have is because they delivered tax cuts that the country simply couldn't afford.
Nicola Willis says the focus of this budget will be health, education, police and defence.
Our savings and reprioritisation program, that's generated billions of dollars that gives us the room to make the investments that are really needed.
But Nicola Willis's new spending envelope is being cut from $2.4 billion to $1.3, and much of that's already been spent on things like new cancer drugs.
We can't cut our way to greater prosperity. We can't cut the health system further. We can't cut the education system further.
There will be a little something extra to ease the cost of living pressures for some.
I do want to really be careful with your expectations. The measures are modest. This is not a budget that's a lolly scramble.
Deploying that age-old go-to line for those eager to appear prudent managers of our economy.
That is not a lolly scramble.
Won't be a lolly scramble.
There cannot be a lolly scramble.
It doesn't mean that there's a lolly scramble.
Grant Robertson used to say his budgets weren't going to be lolly scrambles either.
But they always were.
We asked the public what they think the government's priorities should be for this budget.
The main one is the health sector. That's where they need to put the dollars first. Because if you don't have a healthy population, you don't have happy people. Simple as that.
On healthcare, hospitals, medical, definitely.
Police, education and healthcare.
And what's hurting them most in terms of the cost of living?
Supermarket prices for food.
I could make a meal in $10 a few years ago. Now it costs like at least $30.
I want to go to his house for dinner, Chewy. He can only make a meal for $30, mate. Ribeye every night with a bottle of, I don't know, some kind of nice wine alongside. $30. Woof.
They look in the basic necessary foods and stuff. If they control the price on that, that would be much helpful for the people.
The Finance Minister, though, trying to keep expectations in check.
All right, that's all we're going to do. So I've got some other clips to play, Craig, and then we want to show the whānau. You and I have to talk as well. What are we doing about the podcast this week? But we'll do that later. And then we'll talk about the podcast that you and I have already recorded that people know about because we used that clip last night talking about Family Boost. But yeah, what are your reactions to the report that we've just watched?
I mean, it's astonishing, really. There's a few things it sort of talks about, really. The first of which is you don't make decisions like this so close to the budget. The budget's 3 weeks away. This suggests essentially that Cabinet can't agree on what the budget is. And there's a lot of disagreement and chaos going on. It also suggests that that ACT, and I'm guessing it's ACT, have laid down some red lines inside Cabinet, saying we won't agree to a budget where there is no pathway back to an Obergall surplus, so that the surplus or the deficit number. And so they've cut the operating allowance, which essentially takes by my guess is $4.5 billion of spending out of government spending over the next year. That gives them the ability to artificially say we might be able to get to an Obergall surplus by the end of the forecast period, which is 2029.
Just explain to us, us morons. You said Obergall twice, just so people.
Oh, sorry, forgive me. So Obergall, operating balance excluding exceptional gains and losses. So it's the thing that we call the surplus or the deficit.
Okay, it's the money they've got in their wallet.
So and the Obergall surplus, the operating surplus, is the thing that governments target, trying to get it to exist, trying to get out of deficit in order so that they've got more money left over from their day-to-day spending, even after they've paid for everything. And that's what we generally think of as the Obergall. Now, if we look at the numbers, and we talked about health, for example, they talk about health in the section there. Next year alone, the health service, just to keep the lights on, needs $1.55 billion. There's only $1.3 billion available in total. So even after you've used all of the available money, there's still not enough money just to pay for the cost of living changes inside health. Now, that doesn't include education, it doesn't include police, justice, anything else. It's just, we've spent all the money just in one department. And you've actually invested nothing new, because there's no new investments or new spending anywhere else. So I'm struggling to see how they're going to deliver, as the segment suggested, increased health, education, police, or defence spending from the available amounts of money. The only way they can do that is to cut.
We're going to show a chart that you made for the podcast supposed to be coming out Thursday, which is now, after today, irrelevant. We'll show that at the end, which is sort of what you're hinting at now. But first of all, Chu, you got any questions before we go into some of these clips?
No. Keep rolling. I think the only thing that would have, rather than saying, "Hey, look, this isn't a lolly scramble," is if she just leans and looks dead down the camera and goes, "I don't know what I'm doing."
Yeah, well, we figured that out already. We figured that out last night as well. All right, let's have a look at this. This is a clip. It's only a minute and 10 seconds, and it's talking about the government books remaining out of balance. That's the heading for this clip.
Put simply, manageable government debt levels are an essential foundation for a strong economy and for your financial future. But achieving lower debt isn't easy because the government books remain out of balance. The post-COVID structural deficit has left a big gap between what the country needs to fund to deliver on the spending commitments previous budgets have made and what we need to earn to pay for that spending. The government is currently, rightly, borrowing billions to bridge the gap. Every Thursday afternoon, New Zealand Debt Management issues around $500 million of government bonds. Some of this is to roll over existing bonds that have expired, but large chunks of it are for new borrowing. It effectively means that the New Zealand government is borrowing $500 million every week. And that, by the way, is in addition to larger bond syndications we schedule each year.
Right. A couple of questions before we roll another 45 seconds. Is what she's saying accurate? Because she's saying we're borrowing $500 billion in bonds, but some of it's to cover others. So are we actually borrowing? Is it actually a $500 negative every single year for the week for the country? Is that what we're seeing?
No. So some of it is rolling over existing debt. So some debt matures. We need to replace that debt, so we reissue the debt, and that's so it's not adding to the net debt pile. It's only the new part of the debt which adds to the true debt pile.
Do we have any idea how much is adding to it each week?
So last budget we borrowed the Crown borrowed an extra $12 billion.
So it's $1 billion a month.
So it's $1 billion a month.
So it's $250 a week.
But we also delivered $14.6 billion of tax cuts.
Well, this is the next question, because I've written down here that they're making all these statements about getting the books in balance and all the stuff we have to borrow. If we talked about $14 billion worth of tax cuts and $3 billion to landlords, that's $17 billion, and they borrowed 12. So I'm not smart, Craig, but if I can look at it and go, they opened up their wallet and they flicked out $17 billion. It was a choice. Just a choice. All gone, 17 billion. And now they're talking about fixing the deficit, balancing the books, stopping borrowing as much. Why is there no one kind of, I don't know, laser pointing her like you would with a cat going, give away, don't borrow, don't give away. You know, it's like, it's so infuriating that a rodeo clown in Dunedin can have these thoughts. And she says it with such confidence that it would appear enough people buy it.
It is, as you point out, Pat, gaslighting of the highest order to say the debt is too high. We need to do something about debt. Ignore the fact that I've increased the debt significantly to pay for tax cuts to benefit groups like tobacco companies. And at the same time, I'm therefore going to cut services. I'm going to cut investment. I'm going to cut R&D. I'm going to cut the things that are actually going to grow the economy, which actually make the debt affordable in the first place. So I'm going to make people pay through reduced services or forcing them to pay more charges in order to make right the problem I've created because of a completely unaffordable tax plan I promised at the last election. So
but hang on, but promised and then chose to carry through. I mean, we can't just let her off because there's other things they promised that they didn't do, and there's other things they never told us about Smoke-Free 2025, which they then just added in. So it's not like, oh, they made this promise and then they were bound by it. Horse shit. The national government promised to put our Dunedin hospital back to bigger and better than it was before Labor pared it back a little bit. They broke that promise pretty carefully. That wasn't hard for them to break. So just because they promised it, we can't just let them off. Not that you are, but they can't be let off that they made this promise, so they had to do it. Horse shit. Absolute horse shit.
I think you're right to highlight the choice there. Yesterday we discovered, or this morning, sorry, we discovered that there are going to be fewer ICU beds in the new Dunedin hospital
down by
because they're going to invest. They're going to invest less in that facility. At the same time as they're reducing, they've decided to cut the amounts of new spending, but at no point in time have they revisited the tax cuts that they've put on the table. At no point in time have they revisited any of the spending decisions that they've made. The $1 billion of new growth fund, which hasn't appeared anywhere, doesn't do anything. The billions of unfunded promises for new roads around the country, which they have no idea how they're going to finance. The $20 billion health investment fund, which is a 12-page PowerPoint, which has no new money in it. And if we just take health again, just for an example, again, we need $1.5 billion. There isn't $1.5 billion, but over the past few weeks, Simeon Brown's also promised $285 million for new GPs. He's promised $50 million for private sector investment in health. He's promised $30 million for new practice nurses inside GPs' practices. These are all good things, but there's no new money. So that means it has to go on top. So you're now adding hundreds of millions of dollars of extra expenditure, but because there's no money, it acts as a cut.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge I have, is that they're not being honest with New Zealanders about the scale of the challenge that's in front of them. And they're not being honest by saying, well, we'll just cut the operating allowance, as if nobody in New Zealand will then know what that means and what the likely consequence of that is for cuts to other government departments.
Chewy, if you want in, you should jump in, because I'm going to just keep trucking with some of these videos. So put your hand up.
I'm glad you brought up the hospital thing. Like the words that came out of my mouth when I saw a news story about cuts to, I think it's operating, ICU beds or
intensive
something.
care.
ICU beds
from 30 to 20,
which brings it below what our current hospital has.
Yep.
Like, I'm furious all over again. And I think the budget day, I'm going to have to be somehow strapped down.
We'll do a live show that night from the pub, Chewy. We'll go to Wolf and do a live show from there.
Actually, that's
and
not a bad idea.
Ask us it. But do they still have the greenhouse at the back of Wolf?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
From the greenhouse.
Best part of Dunedin.
Yeah. So in terms of them, but in terms of health, I mean, but the thing I would actually look at, health has some money. Education has absolutely no money. So every year we need approximately $500 million just to keep the lights on in health. And it isn't there. So if you need to find that money, then you've got to cut $500 million from somewhere else. We saw huge cuts at the last budget, very significant cuts at the last budget. We're now adding further cuts on top. Every time you take $1 away from government spending, not only is it you've got to cut something to do it, you're adding to the cost of living pressures for everything else, because inflation still exists. So it gets progressively harder and harder to do.
Right. Next point here. It's only a 45-second clip, but she says this, that you used the phrase gaslighting before, Craig. She says something at the end of this 45 seconds. Well, before we do that though, because it kind of dovetails into this. Every journalist that has access to these people, especially Nikki Noboats, the start of every single question should be, in lieu of you giving away $17 billion in tax cuts and landlord reimbursements, and then ask your question. It's a bit the same of this, because she is gaslighting here because she wants us to ask the question that she should be asking herself. Have a listen.
And that level of borrowing obviously can't go on forever, or else our kids and our grandkids will be left with unsustainable debt and considerable economic uncertainty. Most of you can probably relate to this if you think about your own household budget. Sure, sensible borrowing has its place, but no overdraft can be extended forever. And while you can keep giving the credit card a hammering for a while, left unpaid, it does eventually get declined. It's worth bearing this in mind next time somebody tries to suggest to you that the New Zealand government needs to spend more on something. The second question always needs to be, but how will we pay for it?
But how will we pay for it? Nicola Willis wants us, who are going, where's our Dunedin hospital, wants us to ask ourselves, but how will we pay for it? And what we've been screaming for the last 18 months is, hey, National, how are you going to pay for this with $17 billion going in tax breaks and landlord reimbursements? Craig?
I mean, it's not as if they haven't been told repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again that this is the case. So, you know, there's a couple of mischaracterizations, though, for the audience in that statement that are really important.
Yeah.
The first one of which is, eventually the credit card will be declined. The last time we held a debt auction in New Zealand, it was 450% oversubscribed. So for every dollar that we managed to sell into the market, people wanted $4.50. So there's no shortage of that. There's no likelihood at any point in time soon ever of it being declined. New Zealand has net core current debt levels below those on the internationally comparable measure, below Australia, the UK, the US, Japan, pretty much every other developed world in the country.
So hang on. So should we need to extend our overdraft, New Zealand, we can get it from almost anywhere we want. There's no decline coming.
But specifically, if we borrow to invest in things that we actually need in the country, one, we lift the productive capacity of the country. Two, we lift the what we call the trend growth rate of the country, so we can grow faster before we hit inflation. And three, we can get around and do things better. We lift the quality of life for New Zealanders. Now, why wouldn't you do that at the same time as we have a housing shortage in the country, whilst 13,000 fewer people are working in construction, whilst we know we're desperately short of hospitals, schools, all the other things that we've failed to invest in for a really long time. So when Nicola says, if we keep borrowing, our kids will have to pay for the borrowing that we're doing today. That's true, but they'll also have the assets that we built. If you don't build the assets, your kids have to build the assets. You just haven't paid for the stuff that they should have on the way.
This is this classic bait and switch these guys are doing. We talked about the shell game leading up to the last election, where all they'd point at is the $10 billion debt to Kāinga Ora, but they'd never talk about the $25 billion worth of assets that Kāinga Ora now has. And if I could get an overdraft that gave me 2.5 times on the same day the assets to that overdraft, I'd be spending as much as I could, because we all know that the cheapest time to build something is yesterday, as we're now finding out with the ferries. Yeah.
Well, the ferries, but also street homelessness in many towns in New Zealand is frankly exploding, because we've kicked lots of people out of emergency housing, at the same time as we've stopped building Kāinga Ora housing. So, these things should be being done, not just because they are good things, not just because New Zealand is short of them, but because now is exactly the right time after one of the steepest recessions we've had since 1991. To actually be doing that.
Yeah.
Instead, we're acting, as we in the jargon, we call this pro-cyclically. So the economy is a bit weak. It's really struggling to get traction for growth. So obviously the thing to do is to take even more money and more investment out of it, shaking confidence, losing jobs, and doing exactly the thing you should not be doing, and which 100 years of economic history tells us is a dumb idea right now.
One more clip, 45 seconds, then we're going to wrap with showing them that slide of yours, but it'll only be another couple of minutes and we'll wrap up altogether. So this is, again, hammering that idea of leaving debt for our children and grandchildren.
Our strategy is focused on two key goals: putting net debt on a downward trajectory and returning the books to an Obergalex surplus by 2028, for all the reasons I previously laid out. This strategy matters. It matters for getting the books back in order, and that's about much more than a set of numbers. It's about keeping interest rates lower and providing a solid platform for future growth. It's about ensuring New Zealand continues to be seen as a stable, reliable place to invest in and lend to. And it's about making sure we don't leave our kids and grandkids with debts they just can't repay.
I don't know about you, Craig, but talking about my kids and my grandkids, and I'm just going to hammer this dead horse because it needs to be hammered. If I won lotto this weekend and I could afford to buy my future kids and grandkids a house, it's like this government has given all that money away, then got an overdraft to buy the house, and then left that overdraft to the kids, because they had the ability to not leave debt to our children and grandchildren. Say it together, team, by not giving away $17 billion in tax cuts and landlord reimbursements. They chose to do that, and now they're all being all worried about not borrowing too much. If they hadn't given away so much, that this also wouldn't be a question. I know we've said it 3 times tonight, but I am not going to let this go.
The other thing here is that the other side of the equation is you can grow the economy more quickly. So you can encourage investment, you can encourage innovation, you can encourage employment. And so, the best time to do that with government investment is essentially right now, when, there are lots of people becoming unemployed, when there's lots of spare capacity in the economy, and all of that extra money just doesn't turn into extra inflation. And so when Nicola says, we want to encourage growth, we want to encourage New Zealand to be a great place to be, what encourages growth and what encourages New Zealand to be a great place to be for other for companies is infrastructure. They can get their goods to market, that they've got a skilled workforce, that the workforce isn't sick and is looked after in a health service, that when they want to deliver, they have got a great IT system. The electricity market works and doesn't have huge spikes in electricity pricing as we do in New Zealand. That there's a credible platform for consistent investment. Instead, we've just pulled the rug over the past couple of years on pretty much all of that, and then just assume people will turn up because the right side are now in charge.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
I know we've kind of sort of covered this off, but I want to do one more thing. Chewy, you'll want to see this as well, because this is from the are we recording a new podcast tomorrow, Craig? Is that the plan?
Probably. I need to find some time to actually do it.
Very good. Because this is a slide that Craig had for the podcast we recorded on Saturday. Now, do you see this top line, Chewy? What does that mean for Budget 2025? The top line says, Budget 2025 has an operating allowance of $2.4 billion. And I'll read this out for the people who are...
throw it away.
Who are on the audio podcast. So Budget 2025 or 25 has an operating allowance of $2.4 billion. Only it doesn't, because $1.4 billion goes to health. Other pre-commitments, including Pharmac, are $300 million, so that's $1.7 billion. $700 million left. Only we haven't set aside anything for education. Removing that $100 million. Defence has been promised new money. No money for police to reach targets. No money for regional growth fund. No money for going for growth fund. Funding will only come from cuts. And now, of course, I'm going to say the news that Nicola Willis gave us today was actually the Budget 2025 now has an operating allowance of $1.3 billion. And as you said earlier, $1.4 billion goes to health. And we're done.
At least budget documents will be short.
Yeah, true.
But in all seriousness, we can joke about this. What this essentially is saying is we're going to have to cut by billions of new dollars in order to make this work. Now, the question then is, where does that come from? The Crown spends about $125 billion a year. About half of that is pensions, welfare, and other what we call transfer payments. So there's about $60 billion left. About $45 billion of that $60 billion is health and education. So let's assume you're not going to cut that. That means you've got approximately $15 billion left. So you're going to need to find an extra $1 billion a year just to stand still. And then if you want any new investments, you're going to have to cut further than that. So you can see it's not just a small percentage, because you're trying to find that out of only $15 billion of remaining discretionary expenditure. So that means very significant cuts for other government departments. The problem we have is you may be able to do that if we just come off a really good year. Yep. But we've just come off a year where we've just cut again. So how we get to that place, and again, the timing is really bad. We haven't given departments the space to make those decisions. We haven't talked to the public about what that's likely to mean for services, which ones are going to get cut, how they're going to manage, how all of the non-government organizations who work with government in communities, how they're going to react and how they're going to manage the delivery of their services, like the Salvation Army, like Downtown City Mission. So there's all of these problems just spell chaos at the budget.
Oh, Craig, it's very generous of you to give us some time while you're over in Australia. Obviously, we're going to be talking again, you and I, in the next 24 hours. Chewy, you've been sitting there listening to a lot of this. You want to add anything in before we wrap up? with Craig?
I have two questions for you, Craig, kind of on the same thing. There's always talk about returning the government books to a surplus. How many times has National achieved that?
We saw a surplus in 2014. Bill English saw a surplus that year, and then it went back into deficit. We saw ironically, the Labour government in 2019 delivered a $7.5 billion surplus. Nobody noticed. And then we went back into deficit during COVID. We, if I look at a country like the US, which is over the past 30 years has had a really good economic growth record, over I think it's 25 years, it's been in surplus 4 years.
Yeah,
New Zealand's been in surplus many times, but most of that was under Sir Michael Cullen and then Grant. But we've had a much poorer economic growth record. So if these two things are related, they're actually related negatively rather than positively.
So this is my follow-on question. It seems to me that a lot of countries that do have a good economy, like the GDP is good, the growth's good, everything seems to be humming. There's absolutely or very little focus on whether they are in surplus or not. Like if things are getting built and your people are happy.
Yep, and so that the simple thing here is that if as long as the economy is growing, you can be in deficit and your debt to GDP ratio is actually falling because the economy is growing more quickly than your debt is rising. So as a consequence, yes, you've got a orbital deficit of $500 million, but if your revenue has gone up by $1 billion, then it doesn't matter because your debt to GDP is falling over time. And as a consequence, you're actually cutting debt. It's falling in comparison to the overall size of the economy. So
then we come back to the same thing that we've spoken about before. The problem is New Zealand's economy is not productive enough.
It's not productive enough. And why is it not productive enough? It's because we have consistently failed to invest, because we over-invest in housing, because we have built our growth on dairy, timber, beef. Those are good things, but we also need to grow the other parts of the economy. And we have signally failed to do that over 4 decades in New Zealand.
But austerity will work this time, right?
Well,
it's going to work this time.
Beatings will continue until morale improves. And, and this is pretty much, where, yeah, indeed. And this is where we are at. We're going to try it again. A journalist asked me this morning, was this an austerity budget? And I said, it might not be, let's not label it an austerity budget, but it's pretty close to one. If it's not a true austerity budget, all of the things are there. We're cutting when we don't need to. No one's forcing us to cut, right? There are other things we could be doing to fill the gap. We're choosing not to do those. Instead, we're choosing to be austere. We're choosing to deliberately withhold things from ourselves rather than actually delivering the things New Zealanders need.
Hey, Craig, I love it when you come on. You always leave us feeling so happy and cheery at the end of the conversations.
Apologies again. One day I will come on here with good news. It looks as if there's good news in Canada, at least. Yeah. So I'm very happy about that. With the Canadian election there, and it looks likely here in Australia, without wishing to jinx it, that the election there election here will go really well. But in little old New Zealand, we are left, unfortunately, facing a government that seems to want to continue to deliver more of the kinds of austerity budgets and politics that we've seen in New Zealand's history, in other countries' history, and we know the consequences of them because we've been here before.
Yeah. Hey, be safe, be well, have a good time in Australia, and I guess you and I will talk in maybe the next 18 hours or so, eh?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate you coming on. All the best. Podcast is going great. Okay, let's get a few of these super chats out there, and then we've got one more story for the night. Specifically around Craig's conversation, I propose cutting Seymour's bills out of the budget. There you go. One done. She's not very good at this. Yep, I think that's
But how patronising, though. Maybe if she patronises us even harder, it'll work this time.
Howie says, Nats are so wed to power, they play to the bullies and so become bullies themselves. They sell us out with blind lies, greed, nothing more to it. I guess when I hear that, I think, how much will I sell my soul for? And I just don't think in New Zealand politics you can make that much. Like if you're in America and some blooming lobby group was offering you $5 million a year, you might sell your soul for it. I mean, probably not still, but you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to sell your, like, what is it? Better to be hung for a sheep than a lamb is the old saying. So if you're going to steal something to feed your family, you might as well steal a sheep, because why would you get hung over a little lamb that might feed your family for a few days, where a sheep might do it for a couple of weeks? Like, if you're going to sell your soul, do it for something worthwhile. I don't know if you can get that in New Zealand, that kind of worthwhile amount to sell your soul for. Amosy, can't wait till we get rid of this catastrophic government trashing everything that was part of a that was part way still decent, in our Aotearoa, New Zealand. And finally, Peter says, I wonder if Willis found Richardson's 35-year-old plans down the back of the sofa, but didn't account for inflation. I'm going to push back against that. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that the cleaners in Parliament would have missed that. I think it's much more likely, much more believable that Ruth Richardson's ghost, I know she's alive, but I also believe she has a ghost, goes into Nicola Willis's room at night and whispers into her ear. That's where it's coming from. All right, fair enough. Now,
Richardson's pre-ghost.
Some other super chats that have come in recently, thank you for them. JC, have I mentioned that this Thursday is May Day? Best we all take to the streets. We got to take the power back. I've got news on that. I've got news on that.
Doctor strike.
Give me a sec. NZCTU Fight Back Hui, happening across the country Thursday, 1st of May, May Day, Palmerston North at Arena 3, Pascal Street, 12:30 to 1:30. Come and join workers and union members who have been attacked by this government. Hey, this is maybe a good idea. Thank you for the super chat, Jenny. It was very generous. Maybe people should get us news over the next 24 hours as to what's happening where, and we can mention it on the show tomorrow night. Andrew K says, I don't like it, but Hoskins doesn't bag National. That one interview was the exception. Trump's fans don't hear his flaws. His podcasters don't point them out. Well, there's some interesting things going on with Trump. You're hearing, what I tend to do is keep up with the Joe Rogan commentary through other people, like Sam Cedar reviewing Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan's coming out talking about due process and about how, you can't not have due process. So I think that you're right. But I think for some of them, they've even got to a point where you're like, dude, you can't. Like the arguments going on at the moment about MS-13. And it's like, yeah, but how do you find out if it is MS-13 or it is a hairdresser? You do a thing called due process. So if you don't do due process, then you lose that whole ability of actually getting rid of the MS-13s and not. Anyway. Chad says, thank you, $20 super chat, very, very generous. The truth may be frustrating, inducing, but thanks for the informative discussion that's not being held elsewhere. Yeah, and I guess that, I know I am partly tongue-in-cheek when I say that about Craig. It's always such riveting, exciting talk, but the most important thing is it's important talk. It needs to be spoken. People need to be able to share this clip tomorrow on whatever social media platform they can, and through the weekend when we make them into shorter clips. Bill says, here's $10 for an emotional support super chat. Cheersies, hearsies.
I love that.
Okay, let's get into the last story of the night. It's a quick one. I'm going to make it a quick one. We are talking about David Seymour asking mayors to help battle truancy. I'm going to play the first minute 30 from Checkpoint, we're not going to use the checkpoint story per se, but the first 90 seconds kind of sets up the story and gives us all the information we need.
A government call for mayors to help battle truancy is cheeky and completely at odds with earlier instructions for councils to stick to roads and pipes and keep their noses out of everything else. That from Porirua Mayor Anita Baker in response to a letter from the Associate Minister of Education. David Seymour has written to Aotearoa's mayors asking them to help boost school attendance. He's referred them to daily attendance data and is encouraging them to, quote, lead the change they want to see. The Minister suggests they take small steps like letting businesses know school-aged children should be at school during school hours. The government's target is for 80% of students to be in class 90% of the term by 2030. In term 4 of last year, 58.1% of students attended school regularly. Porirua Mayor Anita Baker joins us now. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
What did you make of David Seymour's letter?
I thought he was really cheeky. After being told by the Prime Minister and the local government minister to stick to our core knitting, he's now wanting a formal role. And I thought, well, if he wants us to do that, he should fund us. Because actually, we already work with the schools. And I haven't seen any little kids wandering around in the shopping centres. And if the business people had, I'm sure they would talk to them.
So have you spoken to your counterparts, your mayoral counterparts, about what their reckons are too? Do they share similar thoughts?
I spoke to a couple and yes, yeah, it wasn't great. It was like we work with schools already. We know what's happening. We run programs for our youth and we work with the colleges. So I just don't think he knows what we actually do anyway.
So there's the setup for it, Chewy. What we're going to go now is go to breakfast from this morning to a friend of the show, Pat Newman. Pat Newman has some feels around this, as only Pat Newman can, about what David Seymour is asking mayors to do.
School. In Northland, daily attendance dropped as...
I'm just going to start that again because it's resynced itself. Here we go.
School attendance rates have been in decline for a decade, so for some parts of the country, hitting a 94% daily attendance rate could be a tough goal. In Northland, daily attendance dropped as low as 71% earlier this month.
Now, can I just say, this is under this government. This is not blame Labor. 18, 19 months. This is under this government. They made such a lot of noise about the last government and attendance rates, even though there was this thing called COVID when students most of the way through the last government had basically stay-at-home orders for a week. Now, this is this government. Put it this way, COVID-19, it's 2025. It's a full 5 years ago. Now, this government owns this. And what are they doing to solve this? Could the Right Honourable Mayor of Horowhenua please help us with this? Pat Newman shares some thoughts.
We spoke with Pat Newman from the Te Tai Tokoro Principals Association. Here's what he had to say about Mr Seymour's letter.
I think what we're looking at, to be quite honest, is a minister who is handing off his responsibility and his government's responsibility around attendance and dropping it back and blaming it those of us that are working our guts out to improve attendance, blaming us, pulling in now supposedly the mayors of each area to do something about it because there's no funding for them. This is all handover government ministers' responsibility for not at no cost to the government. If we look at it, so far this year, he's cut one of the big things that helps keep kids in schools. That's lunches. So he's decimated that, stuffed it up, but he's talking about attendance. He's now cut the attendance officers. Another thing that we had to help us, I mean, look, I hate to say it, but this is about headlines. This is about votes. It's not, this is also about covering your backside, Minister, and it is nothing more clear than that. What we need, you're not giving us. What you're giving us is at our cost.
So, Chewy, big part about that. Of course, the ball's up with school lunches, cost cutting for school lunches, making them unappealing and children not wanting to get there for. And as I was saying earlier today, I called them the truancy officers. I couldn't remember the name, but the attendance officers. They're cutting the people who have been charged with dealing with people who are wagging and not getting to school. And now, because their results are 71%, they're panicking and they're wanting the same people they told to keep their nose out of non-council business to please help them fix this problem.
It's insulting. I can't see how anyone would see it as anything other than that. David Seymour is an incompetent person, just generally. He didn't win Dancing with the Stars. Incompetence. All of his pet projects have failed because he's incompetent. His inflated sense of self-worth has got him into these positions. And the only reason that he isn't being absolutely schooled, pardon the pun, by the Minister for Education is that she doesn't want any of his stank to transfer to her. That's it. It's incompetence and it's ass covering, and that's why it's continuing. Like he hasn't achieved anything.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I was thinking that again today because once again the Education Minister Erica Stanford's nowhere to be seen. Why is David Seymour charged with this? Why is he the one going around trying to please come and help, please come and help? Where is Erica? This is her department. She's the buck stopper. Ultimately, the buck stopper should be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just a piss take at this point. Oh.
You're not having fun? You're not having fun anymore?
This should just be turned into a paid political broadcast. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, the thing is, right, that with that show, that's after a week of practice. Right? They rehearsed that, and that's what he did. Like, this man, like, he likes to say that he was an engineer. He's been a politician. Like, his whole adult life, and he's this incompetent. Like, he hasn't even been able, to keep people from working out what Atlas is about. Oh, that conspiracy theory again.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, here we go. And people are like,
well,
he's reacted like this. We better look into this. And then suddenly Mickey Forbes is kicking in his door. So there we go. That's David Seymour, Mr. 8%. Fucking incompetent.
Chad says, perhaps a daily appealing, delicious on-time free lunch could be used as an incentive for attendance. Perfectly said. I see you've started that other one. I don't think I'm going to put that out there. I mean, it's funny, but, maybe not.
Oh, fair enough. Better angels and all of that. That's going to leave chat wondering what it is. And that's delicious also.
You guys can look for NZ Doom's comment. It's very funny. But,
I have hit Pat's limit.
Hey, Chewy, lovely to have you back tonight, mate. Good fun. How's the? You guys been watching? Has the mother-in-law been checking you out online?
Wow, that sounds seedy. Yes, she has watched the podcast. I'll be honest. As much as I've loved BHN and being plugged into all of this stuff,
nice to be away.
It was nice to be away.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't look at this stuff. I didn't look at the chat. I haven't been on our Discord or anything like that. It's been nice to decompress. And I guess, like, I see it in the chat. I see the fatigue for all of these things that we talk about and how things are. Decompress. It's going to continue whether you're there or not. So it's just good because this is a marathon, not a sprint. There's more to come.
All right, guys. I don't know about Arvid's comment there either. Something about a relationship failure. I mean, people aren't told of their relationship. I'm not going to speak so much to that. But I think that's us for tonight. Now, some news. We've been talking about May Day, Chewy. Gary Payenda's coming and joining us tomorrow night. And the plan is tomorrow night we're going to have a quick chat with Gary, if that's possible, about what's going to happen the next day, May Day. And then he's coming back on Thursday after the protest day to give us a rundown of everything he saw in the May Day protests.
Gotcha.
So we will be covering that on both nights. So even though Craig wasn't with us in real life last night, we had Craig for 2 nights. We're going to have Gary for 2 nights. You know, like we've got no one else to talk to. That's what's going to happen from here on in. So there you go, team. We will have Gary Payenda here tomorrow, but he's only really coming to talk about the next day. So it won't be a long chat. If you guys have actions happening around your neck of the woods, you want to tell us about it, bigheronews@gmail.com, easy way you can do it. Other than that, Chewy, I think we're pretty much done, my friend. I think we're done for the
night. Yep, sure.
I've made you small. Is there something else? I've made you little.
Look, I'm just going to touch on it very quickly. Tory Whanau withdrawing from the Wellington mayoralty race.
Yeah.
We haven't spoken about that. Yeah, just a very interesting piece of political news that she's gone, okay, cool, I'm going to clear the field basically for Andrew Little.
Yeah.
And I want to do the Māori ward. I thought she was building up a good head of steam to contest that mayoralty, but yeah.
I wonder, maybe we should get her on. I wonder how much of it is, I wonder there'd be percentages of the decision, right? Some of it would be, I can't handle the misogynistic, sexist, racist, xenophobic comments anymore. That would have a part to play. And how much of the decision is the left really has to win this seat, and if there's 2 of us, it'll split the vote. What is the process for that decision making? Because she's had a rough time. She's been a target.
She's been on
the
receiving end of some of the most disgusting campaigns out.
A woman of colour. Funny that another woman of colour. Funny how that
add it to the list.
Yeah, add it to the list. All right. Can I head off now? Was that all right now? Are we okay?
Yeah, we're good now.
Are you sure? Well, maybe we'll message to
well, actually, no, go on.
Too late.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and will be analyzed by butchery and pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Don't really have anything else to offer tonight, Joey. I think it's all been said. Anything else you want to offer?
No, I've done my little tangent.
I had a bit of a moment last night in this part of the thing, and I was like, isn't this crazy? We do this crazy thing, and there's people out there, and we're all crazy together, and I had a bit of a moment that was, this whole thing's pretty cool and pretty crazy. So you're allowed to have a moment now because you went with me last night to have the moment, just in case you want to.
I'm very proud of our little community. Our community of people that are definitely not keeping us a secret. It's good. Keep it up.
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 o'clock for the next edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.